Welcome to Gen X Adulting. And today we are going to discuss cheating, boundaries in a marriage or relationship when it comes to the opposite sex, and maybe touch on adult friendships in general.
Cool.
So, I would like to put it out there that in our 33 years together, 33 years together, we've been this September will be 31 married, dating 32. So 32 years together. Neither one of us have cheated on each other. Brian's smiling. Do you have a secret?
None. None.
We have not cheated on each other. So we do not have experience with that ourselves in our marriage. We both did cheat in relationships before we got married. We were very young, of course, in high school, um, college. So that'd be teenager and really early 20s.
Hmm.
I know I did. And I think you did.
I plead the fifth.
Yeah. You don't, you know, um, we both had experience with that, but we were young. And I
Yeah.
think that happens a lot when you're young.
Yeah.
There's no excuse for it. I don't, and I definitely tried to raise our kids to know that it's not okay, but I think it's definitely not okay once you get married. And if you're in a long-term relationship, for sure. I mean, it's
Yeah.
not,
I was gonna qualify if you're in like a partnership or marriage or something more than just a fling or a high school or college kind of situationship,
yeah,
that kind of thing. But
because I think cheating does happen when you're young. It's a lack of maturity. Your frontal lobe hasn't closed. You don't have as much impulse control. You don't always make the best decisions. Usually there's alcohol involved.
yeah, probably.
So, but once you make that commitment, I mean, I know I told you before we were even married, if you cheat, that's it. I'm the type that if you cheat, there's no forgiveness. We're done because I can't trust again. Once that trust is gone, trust is so important to me. And once that trust is gone, you can't get that back. And so that for me at the age of 22, I knew that would be a game changer for me.
Did you actually tell me that? Because I don't recall that because it wasn't an issue. But was that a hard rule at the time or
It
something?
was.
Not that it's not a hard rule. I don't mean it that way. But you actually was that like a thing you recall telling me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, because my dad had cheated. Like my dad was somebody who cheated on his spouses
Hmm.
and probably anyone he was involved with. And so I had a huge stigma
Hmm.
because of that. And I knew if I was good once I got married, that was it. And if my husband cheated on me, because I was already coming into it with with that suspicion, that concern,
Hmm.
right? So I knew I wouldn't come back from it.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone really
I
does.
don't think so either.
Even if you stay in the marriage, I think it's such a deep wound that I don't think it ever fully heals. And you're always suspicious and you can never trust that person again. And you cannot have a successful marriage, an authentic relationship without 100% trust. And I think a lot of that goes into where I've gone back to you need to be best friends with your spouse or your partner
Hmm.
because when you are best friends, there's just certain lines you will not cross because you are treating that person like a friend, like how you would treat your best friend.
It's funny you say that. I meant to send you this article earlier. Some website I was on, news site, had mentioned it talked about the key to long marriages, and it was talking about the foundation as a friendship,
Yeah.
the foundation of the longer successful marriages.
So here's the thing people think that, when you have that feeling of you're in love and you are feeling all those feelings and it's just so intense and it's so wonderful that's your person, that's your partner, that's your soulmate. But life is very long, and there's a lot of things that happen in life. Eventually, you lose your parents. You could have severe tragedy happen, unexpected tragedy. There's could be job loss. There could be times when you don't have any money. Um, there could be times when you have to move away from your
Yep.
family.
Yep.
So there's a lot that goes on in life. If you have dogs, whenever you lose the dog, that's a horrendous experience. Um, that in love feeling is not enough. It just is not enough. You need to be best friends. I can't stress that enough. You need that best friend relationship to get you through life together. And of course, you love that person and you can totally be in love with that person. I mean, you can be, that can go hand in hand. You can be in love with the person, but you need to make sure you're also best friends. It can't just be being in love with the person. So I think when you are in love with the person and they're your best friend, you don't cheat. I just don't think you cheat because cheating is one of those things that could happen in life and that you can't come back from that. And that immediately destroys a marriage and a relationship. And I think that if you wouldn't treat your best girlfriend or best guy friend that way, why would you treat your spouse that way? Why would you treat your partner that way? You need to treat your partner as good as you would treat your best girlfriend or your best guy friend. They better,
Hmm.
better. But so many times people treat their spouse worse than they do their friends. So I think it's just very important that you have that friendship there because I think if you have that true friendship, that true best friendship there, you can't look the other person in the eye if you've cheated. I don't think you can. I think if you're truly best friends, you can't come back and live
Yeah.
with yourself.
Yeah, I would agree.
And so then that brings up, okay, so why does someone cheat? Why do men cheat? If you were going to speculate on why men cheat, you've never cheated.
Yeah.
So you're not coming at this from personal experience.
Yeah.
But as a man, if you were to speculate, why do you think men cheat?
I think there's that thing where I've read or heard that men fall in love like 10 times a day type of thing. And, especially when you're younger, right? If you're out and about, I don't know, I'll make up bad examples, but you go to the mall and you see a pretty girl. It's like, oh my God, I love her. And then you're in Macy's. And then you go to Nordstrom's or whatever and you see another pretty girl. Oh my God, I'm in love with her. I think that's normal. It's being attracted to someone, but you cross the line for whatever reason when you act on it and you start to be, I don't know, acting on it, right? But I don't know. I don't know why. There's all those concepts or thoughts. Is it power? Is it ego? Is it, low self-esteem on the guy's part? Is it, um, you're proving something? Whatever it is, I don't know.
So,
I can only speculate, but because I haven't. But
mhm.
you know,
I know I think it's ego. I think a lot of it's ego. I think that men who cheat have got to be some form of narcissists in some way because you're completely focusing on your immediate wants and needs over a life you've built with someone.
you. But is it really right? I think it almost it probably is, but at the same time, would you cheat on, say, your soulmate or your best friend type of thing, right?
Right.
It's so maybe, you know, you cheat, you're always fishing and looking for other options until you find the person that is your person,
So
your
then,
buddy, your friend, your soul, all the different terms you can use.
so do you think that people who cheat didn't marry the right one?
100%. Yeah,
Do you think that there's people that will cheat no matter what,
absolutely.
that will never be able to be committed?
100%. So it goes, that's why I think it's not just ego, right? There's some deep rooted issues here, probably that's driving the cheating behavior. That it's lack of faithfulness, really. It's lack of a connection. those type of things,
And
I
that's
think.
why I say I think there's narcissism in there.
But why, if it's say unhealthy, insecure, we talked about attachment styles, right? If
Mhm.
you're insecurely attached from day one with your primary caregivers, maybe that kind of carries you through life in that vein, in a sense.
Okay, so that now we're talking about like where people come from, their childhood,
Mm-hmm.
their trauma, their issues and all that. That goes
Mm-hmm.
into play. So do you think people mask? Do you think people, because I see people sometimes say choose better, but don't you think everyone's putting on their best face? And do you think men in particular put on their best face and don't really show who they are until well into a relationship, until they really have gotten the person? Do you know?
I think it depends, and I think it depends on when you get together with, say, your future wife. You and I got together in college. We drove around the country for a few months together. We lived together for a while. So any, imperfections we had, whether they were physical, a pimple or whatever, right? The blemishes to personality quirks kind of got sorted out, right? That's why I think we're both big advocates of living with someone before you get married.
Mhm.
And I think it's a semi golden rule. You should definitely do that because
Yeah.
you'll figure your shit out together. I think if you meet up with someone later in life that you don't have much history on, but you have a pressure around your biological clock running, that could be for both men and women, right? Women
Mhm.
have a more defined biological clock than men, but men also have one if they want to kind of, you know, to stay status quo, I guess, in a sense. Those are probably different. There's lack of history, lack of bonding, lack of growing up together. We kind of grew up together, right? We
Mhm.
were young when we got together. We grew up together. My parents, if my dad was still alive, they would be married, I don't know, 100 years. I'm you know, so 50, 60 years, whatever it is.
Mhm.
They got together young. So I do think that depends on, the phase of life. Then there's the people who get together, it's their second or third marriage, right?
Mhm.
And some of those are extremely successful because they've kind of figured stuff out. They've sorted through their issues. They know what they want. They're no longer marrying for some unhealthy reason. It's more a healthy connection. So, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense. I just think it's really tough. I think some I think if somebody is not being their authentic self, then they mask when they're looking for a partner. They're almost being a chameleon. They're being who they think they need to be for that person to lure them in,
Well,
bait them.
mhm.
And I think with some personalities, they can do that for a really long time. Like I think they can do that for a year or two.
Are you saying like the guy is doing that or the
I think
woman is
both.
doing it? They're both doing it, right?
I think somebody is. I'm
Yeah.
not saying they're both necessarily doing it. I'm saying in a given situation, there could be masking going on.
Yeah.
And that's why I think if you tell people choose better, well, a lot of people think they are choosing well.
Yeah.
And then they don't realize who they married until a couple years later. And then
I see where
some,
you're
you
going.
see, and then
Yeah.
sometimes everything might be fine because it's just the two of them, right? And so uh, there's no huge challenges, but then you bring children into the situation. And one of the people, and in that situation, it's probably the man, they don't like the pressures or the stresses, or now she's having to give attention to the children and he doesn't get as much attention. And so then the mask comes off in that situation, but that's a new situation he was never presented with before. So you're almost, when you're with someone in a relationship, as life hits you with a bunch of different ups and downs and challenges, you're kind of always growing together and getting to know your partner as life goes on, because there's things that you go through that neither one of you have experienced before. So you could be shocked.
Hmm.
The person that you ended up with, the way they handled a situation could absolutely blow your mind
Yeah.
and affect how you view them. And
Yeah.
one of those things is cheating. And I think that there's people who get married and think their partner would never ever cheat. But there has been people who've had whole other lives going on
Yeah. Yeah.
that have managed two different relationships or
Yeah.
been on dating apps seeing multiple people and and holding down a
Yeah.
solid relationship.
I cannot relate to that at all. I can barely like do what I'm doing in the sense of the amount of time and the energy and the commitment to being part of a family unit. How the hell do you do the like live a double life? It's beyond me.
But I think they're not as involved. Like I think a lot of these people could be traveling for
Yeah.
work
Yeah.
or they always have to do something. They're not home.
Yeah.
I just don't think they're home as much.
Yeah.
I think they've set the tone right from the start. I'm only going to be home this much because it gives them freedom.
Yeah. There's an out.
There's an out.
Yeah.
They always have an out. They didn't start off committed and a family person right from the start so that there would always be that freedom,
Hmm.
if that makes sense. And then that goes back to so they aren't with the right person because if you're with the right person, you want to be home. You want to be with your children. That's your first priority,
Hmm.
right? So
Hmm.
if that's not, and that's what brings me back to narcissism. I really do think people who cheat are narcissists because you aren't thinking about anyone but yourself, but you have everything you should be thinking about in that time of your life. You should be thinking about your spouse or your partner and the commitment you've made to them. And if you've had children, you're risking destroying an entire family. Like I always say, I hope that that sex was worth half of everything you make and your children maybe never speaking to you again. Because it better be that good. Because that's what you have the potential to lose. I mean, it better be the best thing ever,
Yeah.
you know? And because obviously they don't care about losing their spouse because they're willing to risk that. But you're willing to risk your children's respect and how they view you. Because once your children know you cheated on their mom or their dad, your children will never look at you the same way again, ever.
Yeah. Probably.
The respect is gone. So,
I don't know if that's true. I don't know if the respect is gone. It does change, right? The dynamics change, but you could probably explain yourself out of most things to your children because you know, they look up to you so much until it's really gone off the rails, right? But while they're still, say, younger or impressionable, you could probably work that a little bit.
I don't know. I think kids are smart. And especially, what if they're teenagers, middle
Well,
schoolers when this happens?
Well, a lot of times, I think the cheating spouse will blame the other parent for whatever reason. They'll make shit up if they have to, right? Or they'll
Yeah.
have their case. They always have their reason and the case for why. And yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay, so let me ask you this. Is there's been men, I'm going to speak on with about men in this situation. There's men who say I cheated because I wasn't getting it at home.
Hmm.
It, I think that's insane to say. But
Well,
I think that's an insane. Okay, so in my mind,
what if it's like a 5-year drought?
okay,
That's, you
okay,
know,
but in my mind, there should be therapy. Like they should be attending therapy. If you're talking a 5-year drought, but let's be real, that's not what it is. Okay, so guys would have sex every day, right? Every day, maybe multiple times a day if they could. Let's be real. We all know that. And women aren't as interested in sex as men
hmm
because not just because they are carrying so much and so
hmm
much stress. And if a woman is stressed out and burnout, I'm sorry, it's just not at the top of her list. But biologically, in general, they're not as ready to go as men are.
hmm
So a man could be like, I wasn't getting it at home, meaning for a lot of guys, it could be like, I was only getting it twice a week. But like, there's all this life going on. So, but if it really mattered to him, if that was really it, then he should love her and care about her and treat her like a best friend and talk to her about it and say, look, this is really important to me. And we need to talk about this. What's going on? Instead of going out and cheating on her.
What if they've tried that and it doesn't work out and there's no happy medium?
Okay, so if you try and try and try and you've done everything. You've tried to talk to her, you've tried to go to therapy, whatever, then you get out of the relationship or the marriage. You don't cheat.
Okay, so that's where you're going to draw the line is you just don't cheat. If it's that bad, then move on and
Yes,
dissolve the marriage.
you never cheat.
Yeah. Okay.
There's no excuse for cheating.
Yeah.
So if it's, but I just think that's such a cop out saying, because then when you say it's because you weren't getting it at home, he's flipping it and blaming her. He's put accountability onto her.
I'm not trying to take the contrarian opinion here and defend men,
Yeah,
but
no.
that could be true. But to your point, I think your answer is a good one. It's like you try to figure it out.
Yeah.
And if you can't, then move on.
Yeah.
And you're just not compatible and, move on.
And
It's better.
communicate. But here's another thing though. I do think when you're dating and together, and if the person cheats while you're dating,
That's crazy.
you should not marry that
100%.
person.
Yeah, yeah.
And if you stay with that person,
Yeah.
and then they cheat again, it's like, come on. So I think whoever that happens to, if it's a man or a woman, you're responsible for your reaction to that and your decision making. If you choose to marry someone who's cheated on you, then there's a high chance they're going to cheat on you.
Well, I agree. If there's pre-marriage cheating, there should not be a marriage.
Right.
You just don't get married. But what is your thoughts on if someone cheats while in the marriage? What do you do there? My guess is you'll say counseling and see what you can work out. But
well, no. I would leave. I'm done. There's no coming back. For me personally, I'm going to say my opinion. There is no coming back from cheating. There's no coming back from it. It's the ultimate betrayal. So
I understand that for you.
For me.
For you. But it,
I mean, there's a lot of people that they'll go to counseling. I don't know what they do, to be honest, because I can't even fathom it. I just don't think you've killed all the trust in the friendship and in the marriage and in the relationship. There is no more trust because.
Let me ask you this, a quick question. Now, I think I have a feeling I know your perspective here, but cheating, what if it's do you think there's a difference between a relationship cheating while you're married and you have this second life going on versus, man, I just drank too much and woke up next to someone and I don't know what the hell happened. What's your, there are two scenarios. I'm not saying one's, either or, but.
So you're talking about like a one night stand.
Yeah. One night stand that, yeah. Like maybe you blacked out or something or,
I mean, I feel like I couldn't come back from that.
Yeah.
But I could see why some people might. I mean, I could see why. It depends on your situation, especially if financially you can't leave.
But take finances out of it because I do think that's an
okay.
unfair.
So if everything's fine, everything's fine.
There's a couple things. One is choose better. I don't think that's totally fair. I think that's semi-flippant, but I get it. I think if you take the finances out of it too, right? Because that's harder to navigate. I'm just saying your
Just
emotional attachment to your spouse.
I don't think. I think even when you're drunk, well, they say drunk words are true words, right? But I think even when you're drunk, you should know to not do that. I think when you're drunk, typically is when you call or text the person that you want to be with, right? That's when you actually think about, the person you want to be with. So if you're drunk and do it, because if you're saying blacked out, like they're just laying there and basically got raped by, let's say it's a guy, and a woman just like had sex with him.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's different if he's passed out or something. But if you're
Yeah.
talking about just like
No.
a drunk guy, I think a drunk guy would know that he should not be doing that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think a drunk guy would know. And a drunk girl.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I shouldn't just focus on guys. A drunk girl would know she shouldn't be doing that either. I've been a drunk girl.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was a teenager, I cheated as a drunk girl and I
Mm-hmm.
knew what I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not like you're not drugged. I
Yeah.
mean, if
Yeah.
you're roofied, sure.
Yeah, but that doesn't count.
No,
Yeah.
no. I think when it comes to cheating, there's just no coming back from it.
Yeah.
But again, I know that's a very strong opinion, but I don't think it is. But I know for some people it feels that way. But
Yeah.
I think you're right. I think the choose better is flippant. I
Yeah.
think that's insulting to say to people. I think that you're taking the horrible thing that the other person did, the accountability of that, and putting it on the victim, the person who was
Yeah, it's
victimized in the
victim
situation.
shaming.
It's victim
Yeah,
shaming,
and shifting the blame.
shifting
Yeah,
the
and the
blame.
accountability.
Yeah, and that can go both ways.
Yeah.
If it was a man who cheated and you're telling these women choose better, and if it's a woman who cheated and you're telling this guy choose better, people mask and
Yeah.
if they're not being authentic, they're masking.
Well, I was going to go
So,
back to that. That's part of the flippancy of it is people do mask.
yeah.
So it's like, I thought I was choosing great. This guy or
Yeah.
girl was wonderful.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden they're an asshole.
And that can go on for like a year or two. And just like what I said, it can be fine if it's just the two of them. But when you bring children into it, sometimes that's what triggers people's narcissism. And like
How so? What do you mean?
and this does go about men. There's men who are fine when it's the two of them, but as soon as they have children, they do not like that they're not getting as much attention anymore because the children are taking her attention away. Or maybe they're not having sex as much anymore because the children needs, her needs and all that. So they get resentful and they're almost pouting and having a temper tantrum because they're not getting the attention instead of viewing it as we're partners, we're a mom and dad now, we're a family, we're going to share this responsibility. This is a beautiful thing. Look at what we created. Let's raise this child together. No, there's men who look at it as that's taking time away from me.
Mm-hmm.
And that is narcissism.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a lot of men who the women didn't know he was going to be like that. How would you until you had children?
Yeah.
And then the women are like, wait a minute. I thought you were going to be this great dad, but you're just mad because you're not getting my attention anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that happens. And so you can't tell that woman choose better. How was she supposed to know he was going to react like that?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not
No,
fair.
it's crazy. Honestly, that's a crazy dynamic because it got me thinking as you were saying it. It's like, well, how the hell do you solve this at a societal level where you go to there's probably pre-marriage classes, right? But do they go into this stuff? I doubt it.
I don't know.
I
And then
don't know.
there's people that naturally manipulate. I think you should, well, this goes back to what we've talked about in previous episodes. You have got to talk about how you guys see roles before you ever get married. And you really have to talk and talk and talk about it because you have to get a real feel from that person. Okay. Do they really want kids? Do they really want to raise children with me? Or are they just more into being with me and the idea of having kids because that's what
Mm-hmm.
you're supposed to do, or it's the image of having kids.
Mm-hmm.
If that's what you want to, if the woman wants that, I don't know though. There's no guarantees, and that's probably one of the reasons why there is such a high divorce rate.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I think also people buy into the wedding,
Mm-hmm.
the fantasy of the wedding and the party and the being married and that blip of this beautiful the engagement and the shower and the wedding and newlyweds and all of it is a blip in marriage. It is so quick. Life is marriage.
Mm.
Life is marriage. That whole time, that year or whatever of the planning and the fun, that's great. That's not marriage.
Yeah.
You have to be able to do marriage with the person. And marriage is hard. and marriage is awesome, and marriage can get ugly, and marriage is the most beautiful thing that you will ever experience. So you better make sure you're marrying your best friend, and you better make sure that you can trust that person 100%, because it's it's not always easy. And you can't have someone that's going to be like, and then go cheat on you.
Yeah, well, I think what's interesting too, though, is it is permanent, right? If
Yes.
the if everything lines up, it's permanent, and you think about how much you change and evolve individually
Yeah.
over the years, and then within your marriage and professionally and your external family, and if you have kids, the different phases you go through, and no, there's no, I think honestly, it's modeled behavior in my mind, right? We've talked about that, where you've asked, I think, why is it, why don't you cheat? It's like it's modeled behavior. My dad didn't cheat. I had uncles around; none of them cheated. My cousins, they're all still married. So
Hmm.
I think that helps quite a bit, is to have
But
modeled behavior.
look at my upbringing though. Like my dad did cheat,
Yeah,
and but it made me so serious about
yeah,
I'm not going to cheat, and my husband better not cheat.
yeah,
So I think it could be model behavior, but also if there's that bad behavior, it'll either that person may model that bad behavior or do the exact opposite
yeah,
because of the
yeah,
trauma it caused
yeah,
them.
yeah.
So, I mean, I just think that, well, here's a point. So, because you said something interesting there, you said it's permanent. That's such a great marriage is permanent.
It's supposed to be.
Marriage is permanent,
Hmm.
and it is supposed to be. So, if you want to be married, not everyone wants to be married, and that's so fine. But if you want to be married, it's permanent.
Well, I think too, though, we're talking marriage, but there's people who have life partnerships that don't get married, right? To your
Yes.
point, and I think that's
Yes.
perfectly fine. I think feels like it's more common now, and that's all good.
Yeah.
And it's but the dynamics of those, I wonder if they're different at all. I don't think so. Feels like, it's not like, oh, we have this open marriage, this open relationship,
No, I
and
don't
maybe
think
they do. There's
I don't,
open marriages too, right? But
yeah,
those lifelong partnerships, the same rules probably apply.
I would think so. I would think they just don't feel it's not important to them to take that
Yeah,
next step, but they have just as much of a authentic,
yeah,
permanent relationship as
mhm.
people who are married. But when you look at I think if people start to understand or really view it that this is a permanent decision you're making, this is a lifelong commitment, um, you're going to do all kinds of things together. You really do need to make sure you're okay. Like, if obviously you should be marrying your best friend and you love your best friend and you're in love with your best friend. But let's look at the sexual part of it. I think for women, women are more okay sexually um committing to one person for the rest of their life. I think for men, some men, that permanence, they could struggle with that, knowing that they're not going to have sex with any other women for the rest of their life. That's a huge decision, I would assume, for a guy. Am I wrong? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. I don't. I do, but I don't know.
Pondering that though, like pondering that as a guy,
Yeah.
do you think that guys understand that when they're getting married? Or do you think some guys think, well,
What I would say is, I think, like I'm saying, is marriages and people evolve over time, and that's something you can look back on, right? It's something I could look back on now that we've been together for so long. And it's something you think about when you first get into it, but it doesn't totally resonate or sink in, right? So this is I guess, an interesting concept here, but at the beginning of the marriage, you have to have a decent sex life. Should be pretty robust, because that's about as good as it's ever going to get, right? And so if that's maybe the tip off. If there's a drought in the beginning, it
yeah,
may not be. there's a compatibility issue probably.
For
It will
sure.
never ever get better than say the first 5 to 10 years or something,
And a
right?
lot of that's because there isn't as much stress,
Life
responsibility,
happens.
life,
Yeah.
money, family, bills, all of that, the
Yeah.
stress of it. Um, so that time, yeah, you should be pretty much like,
Little rabbits.
yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. But that still doesn't go back to my question of, do you think that when men get married, they're consciously like okay with, they're truly okay in their soul? This is the only woman I'm going to have sex with for the rest of my life.
I don't know. I it I don't know if it really sinks in or not, or yeah. Yeah, they're fine. You know what I mean? It's like if you think about it and you still jump in and like if you know, right?
Mm-hmm.
If it's the one, if she's the one or he's the one, they're the one.
Okay.
So it's fine. And then but you don't necessarily you none of us are. I mean, we got married as kids, right? Most people we got married as kids.
Right.
And I don't know, I think of, I've reached the age now where if you're under 30, I think you're a kid.
Right.
So I'm totally skewed, I guess.
But
But
we did get married at 23. It was very young.
yeah, we were young.
We have grown up together. I just wonder if, and the if some men haven't truly contemplated that when you're making this decision to commit to your wife, you're committing that she's the only one you're going to have sex with for the rest of your life. And I wonder if subconsciously some men keep that little out, like, well, there could always maybe be a
I
moment in
think
the
they do.
future. Yeah.
I think we all do hold on to like there may be something may happen. Who knows? Right? As irrational as that is, it's like, who knows? You know?
Right. Right. That something could
Yeah.
happen. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so then you could have sex with other people.
I'm 35 years in and it's like, I don't know, is this it? Okay, if it is, it is. If not.
And yet you haven't cheated.
Yeah, yeah.
But then, like, would you say the reason you haven't, other than model behavior,
Hmm.
what would you say is the number one reason you haven't cheated?
Uh I think it's um I think it's the model behavior. I think it's just it is what it is. Like I don't, I just wouldn't do that. I don't have an interest in it. I wouldn't want to do that to you. It's an okay, here's the I'm trying to ponder this while answering it, but I think you start out with I wouldn't do that to you because we're friends. We're buddies, right? You're my girl and we're buddies. And we've chosen to take this life on together, right? And then you get into it and it's like, well shit, now I've got kids and I wouldn't disrespect their mom I just wouldn't disrespect their mom. I wouldn't want them to ever look down upon you because I'm an asshole and treat you like shit. That I think goes a long ways. Um, but it's just not a thing. It's I don't,
Yeah,
does that make
that
sense?
makes sense. And I think that's very interesting what you said. You wouldn't want them to look down upon me because of the way you would be disrespecting me by doing that. I've never thought about that before because I would more think you wouldn't want them to look down on you for doing that. But you're right. Kids do, their respect for their parents can also, they have that modeled behavior, and if the father is treating the mom horribly,
Yeah.
sometimes the children cross those lines too because that's what's going on in the home.
I don't think the kid should ever have to come to the rescue of one of their parents from one of their parents.
Mm,
Now, that's not to say they won't pick sides if you're fighting, right? If we
right.
get into a good one, they may pick sides,
Yeah.
right? And that's just natural.
Yeah.
Um, but to I don't know where I'm going with that, but I don't know if that makes sense. If
To kind of
you wouldn't want to,
you would be setting the tone
yeah, yeah,
of, this is, I don't respect your mom enough to not cheat on her. So
yeah.
you're almost setting the tone of, well,
You
why
don't
do
need,
I have
you
to
don't need, yeah, you don't
why
need
do
to
I have
respect
to
her either.
respect her either?
Yeah,
Now I think it could flip. I think in certain situations the kids could become more protective of the mother.
yeah,
And I do think the kids have issues with the father when they do that.
Yeah, yeah,
Either way.
yeah.
But yeah, I hadn't thought about that before.
Well, let me ask you this. We're talking about men cheating. Why do women cheat?
Mm.
I don't know if it's quite a 50-50 split here, but women cheat on men too. And it's an issue.
So I think, in my opinion is, I think when women cheat, they cheat emotionally first. Um, I think that there's something going on in the relationship that they're not getting from their partner. Maybe he's been an avoidant one too many years. Um, maybe he is disconnected emotionally from her. Maybe he hasn't given her attention in years. He's not treating her like she's his best friend. He's not seeing her. Um, she feels completely ignored. So I think that in certain situations, if the right guy comes along and sees her and is, friendly and fills that emotional void, I think that's what gets women way before a physical cheating situation. I think it's an emotional cheating situation.
The w- I I take issue with that because the one thing you didn't say is female narcissism, right? We're saying men
Right.
are narcissists, but women can be too.
Yes, absolutely.
And then everything you just said, all those reasons for why the woman cheats versus the man, why can't they apply to the men as well?
They can.
Okay.
They can.
Okay.
No, that can go both ways, where the woman ignores the man and doesn't acknowledge anything that he has been doing, doesn't, make him feel valuable or all the things men want to
Yeah.
feel
Yeah.
from their partner. It can go both ways.
Yeah.
And there are female narcissists who will cheat and don't give a crap at
Yeah.
all.
Yeah.
Um, but in general, I think men cheat physically and women cheat emotionally.
Hmm.
So I think that if she is not getting her emotional needs met, and we're talking over time,
Hmm.
because a woman typically will hang in there for years trying to get that, but eventually sh- there's like nothing there, and if the right situation swoops in and another guy gives her that attention, then that leads to a physical cheating.
Yeah.
But typically, she's emotionally cheated first because typically women lead with their heart.
Hmm.
But men, I think, are much easier to cheat physically. And I think there's men who love their partner, love their wives, truly
Hmm.
love their family, and can go cheat and feel nothing for the women they're cheating with.
Hmm.
It's to them, it's truly a physical act, and maybe don't even really have a lot of guilt over it because their emotions are still tied to their partner.
Hmm.
But it's still so messed up because you're you're completely disrespecting your partner, your friend, by cheating on her.
Hmm.
So you think you're giving her what she deserves emotionally, but you're still completely lying to her and betraying her.
Hmm.
So it's very interesting. But I mean, in general, I think women cheat, to answer your question, because their emotional needs are not getting met.
Yeah.
They're being ignored.
I just wonder too, though, that I really feel like for a men too, it's, you know, there's got to be something deep rooted there that is not met emotionally as well to drive them. And it could be narcissism. It could be that simple, and it just could be a biological thing, right? Where we like to hunt and,
Well,
and mate
what
type of thing. I
was
don't know.
what's that saying? Men like the strange,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and they want something new.
Yep.
And there's some men that I think get married, and I think there's men who get married that don't want to get married, you know.
Yeah. No doubt.
And but I think there's men that get married and after a while they're like, "No, I want to have sex with someone else." I do
Yeah.
think there's situations like that.
Yeah.
And those guys should not have gotten married. Those
Yeah.
guys should be lifelong bachelors.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But you never know what situation, family-wise or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me ask you this. If in a relationship,
Hmm.
like we're talking a long-term relationship, and especially in a marriage,
Hmm.
do you think the your partner should be have best friends that are the opposite
No.
sex?
No. I think that's silly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you don't think that there's ever a time where the wife can have a best friend who's a guy, or the husband or the guy can have a best friend who's a girl? Do you think there's ever a situation
I,
where that's acceptable?
to me, no, no, but I can wrap my head around that being a thing. But for me personally, no,
No,
no.
because your best friend should be your partner.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, I kinda, I feel like I've either seen this in the movies like Hallmark or something, or, you read about, I don't know, it feels like it exists, and I don't know if it's completely terrible and wrong or not. But at the same time, it's not my thing. It
If you're
doesn't
talking
I
about
can't
a
even
Hall
make sense of it, but
if you're talking about a Hallmark movie, the best friend, if it's the best friend, usually they end up
no, I
together.
know. Yeah.
No, I don't think there's ever a situation where um the partner like the husband should have a best friend who's a woman and the wife should have a best friend who's a
What
guy.
what if one of them is gay? So the woman has a best friend who's a man who's gay,
I think that's fine.
and yeah, right?
I think that's totally fine.
Yeah,
Because there's no threat there.
yeah.
You
It's
remove the threat.
truly platonic.
Because if you're that close with the opposite sex, there's a high
Yeah,
chance it's going to
good
grow into
chance.
something.
Yeah, a good idea.
Why even like, and also I go back, whatever you're getting from that person, you should be getting from your spouse. I think your spouse should be your best friend. So, okay, so what about just having friends that are the opposite sex that you maybe like go out with and do things with?
No, I don't think that works either. I've thought about this, right? Because we talked about this a little bit the other day. The only opposite sex friends that I have are coworkers, and they're work friends, and
Yeah.
it's truly a professional friendship. And I have pretty good friends,
Yeah.
female friends that I've worked with for years that I respect. But it's a wonderful thing because there's a natural boundary,
Yeah.
you know.
Yes.
So it's a wonderful thing. It protects everybody.
And I would say that you've had friends because of parents of our kids' friends.
Yeah,
Or
yeah,
yeah, yeah. So like when it's couples, that's different.
yeah, yeah.
And usually it's because it's the kid's friends' parents and
Yeah,
all
yeah.
that.
I'm good with
But
that, but there's
yeah.
no sidebar like, "Hey, let's go get ice cream
Yeah,
together."
no.
Well, that's
And
not
even in
happening.
that situation, boundaries should always be held.
100%.
Because
Yeah,
in those situations, when you have couples hanging out,
yeah,
it's very easy for boundaries to get crossed. I'm
yeah,
big on that.
yeah,
And I know some people are going to be like, oh my God, you're threatened, or it's not that. It's a respect thing. And I do believe that whatever you're getting or need should be from your partner. You and your partner should be friends. So you should not need to be friends with the opposite sex. Now you can be friendly
yeah,
and but it's not like they're your friend. You're going to go do things with them.
yeah, yeah,
You're doing things with your partner or a couple situation or work people.
yeah,
But I don't think there's ever, like if a guy says, excuse me, oh, well, she's just my best friend. It's like, no, no, that's a red flag in my eye. No, there's no, no way.
No, I agree. To me, that's not a thing. It's
No,
just not a thing.
I think that's asking for trouble.
Yeah, 100%.
So I think once you get together and you're in a serious relationship or you're in a marriage, um, that privilege, I guess, of having friends of the opposite sex, like close friends of the opposite sex, where you do things with them, I think that needs to be let go because your best friend is your spouse.
I think that happens early on before you get married. That stuff should get sorted out, right?
Yeah, but I don't know if it always
Yeah,
does.
maybe not.
So, but that goes to how hard do you think it is for once you're an adult to make friends?
I have no friends, so I have no idea. It must be really
Except the
hard.
coworkers.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, you mean of the opposite sex
No,
or
in
just in general?
general, in general. Like, do you think that it's mainly when you have kids, it's mainly parents of your kids' friends?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think you have work friends.
Yeah.
Like I have a good group of guys I work with that I really like,
Yeah.
and as some, other people, if they've moved away to other companies, you stay in touch, and I think that's all good. Uh, I don't, once a woman leaves though, that to me, I don't have any female coworker friends who've moved on to other things that I've stayed in
that you
touch
stay in
with.
touch with. So it's
Yeah,
just the guys.
just the guys. Yeah.
So I think as you're going through life, your friends are work and like friends from college or high school,
Yep. Yep.
and then parents of your kids' friends.
Yep.
I think that's it,
Well,
right?
yeah, no, I was gonna add that, yeah, it's like your coworkers, your friends of your kids' parents, or the parents of your kids' friends,
Yeah.
and then it is your high school and college friends that
That
you
you've
probably
chosen
stayed as.
to stay in
Yeah,
touch with, and social media has helped significantly with that.
yeah, and
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I think they're your best friends still, because at least for me, and it's not like I see them, right? We're 3,000 miles away from most people we know. Um, Maybe not that far, 2,000 miles, but if when you see them again, it's like an old glove,
Yeah.
and it just fits,
It
and you
just
just
fits.
slide right in, and it's all
The
good.
ones you've chosen to keep in your
Yeah,
life.
yeah,
Yeah, not just
yeah,
not the acquaintances and stuff, but like
yeah,
the
yeah,
actual real friends.
yeah.
Yeah, and then maybe if you do stuff like belong to like a tennis team or a golfing,
Mhm.
those people become friends. But I do think that friendships, as you're an adult, friendships are situational. And to your point, the ones you made that you choose to stay in touch with from high school or college, or maybe your 20s years,
Mhm.
those are ones that were truly made and based in friendship. But then the others you meet either through work or through your kids.
Well, think about that, right? So people that you're friends with, and I'm not even saying best friends, just people you would consider friends. Maybe they're Facebook friends. And if you happen to go to their city, you hook up.
Right.
If they happen to be down
You
here,
see each
you
other.
see each
Hook up
other. Yeah,
means
not hook up. But um where I'm going with that is, their parents. So some of the people I knew their parents.
yeah.
I know their brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
Might have gone to a family barbecue, so I know their uncles, their weird uncle, weird aunt type of thing, right?
Yeah.
Their grandparents. That's just,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's a permanence that just lasts decades.
But then it makes me wonder like there are people who are huge extroverts and wherever they go,
Mhm.
they talk to people.
Mhm.
If they're at a restaurant, if they're at a bar, if they're traveling, whatever they're doing, their pastime
Yeah.
is talking to people and like making friends.
Yeah.
So I don't, I think that part of that is also if you're an extrovert or an introvert
Yeah.
and how settled you are with the people in your life. And I think if you're introverted, you're fine with your like circle,
Yeah.
your small circle, the people that you trust
Yep.
and your family, whoever you choose. But I think if you're an extrovert, you're constantly collecting people.
Yeah, maybe.
And I think that might be the difference because, and there's not neither way is right or wrong.
Mhm.
It's just there are people that are always making new friends, making new friends, making new friends. And then there's people that I think that can cause them anxiety.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, I know these people and I trust these people and I vetted these people. I only have so much time in my life. These are the people I'm choosing to give my time to.
Mhm.
And that works for them.
Yeah.
But for the extroverts, they're like, wherever we go, we're going
Yeah.
to make friends.
Yeah.
And so part of me wonders if it's like making friends as adults. It really depends on you if you're an extrovert or an introvert.
I think it 1,000% does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then if you're a couple and you're both introverts,
Yeah.
then you're like, no, we're good.
Yeah.
And so it works. And if you're both extroverts, I mean, I know you're an introvert. Like one of your biggest nightmares is is going on a cruise. You would never want to go on a cruise.
It will never happen in my
No,
lifetime. No.
because you're afraid you don't want to talk to people and you don't want to have to run into the same people night after night. You don't want to make friends.
Um, it's an interesting thing because, we did that boat thing. Um, and I did a lot of talking with the captain
When you
and
went out with the
first mate.
boys.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. You had a boys weekend this past weekend
Yeah,
with our
so
sons.
I did a lot of the talking with the captain and the first mate, and so you could say I was an extrovert,
Right.
right?
Well, okay, you're an interesting introvert.
I'm probably am.
because you have no desire to really spend time with anyone, but you're you're like when you're out in the yard working, you talk to everyone, you wave to everyone, and in like in a situation where if you're in a small setting, a small group of people, you will be one of the more extroverted people,
Hmm.
but you don't seek that out.
No.
But if it happens, you're very friendly and very open,
Hmm.
but only if it's like it perfectly falls in your lap.
I wouldn't say that, but just to be clear on the waving to everybody, my theory, my thought there is if I'm outside and they're looking at me, I'm gonna wave.
Yeah.
I'm gonna force the issue.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny
Yeah.
because then they'll either look away or they'll wave,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and then we become friends.
But you've been the first to say you would be fine living on a bunch of property and it'd just be you and me and the kids and
Yeah.
dogs and
Yep.
you wouldn't need to associate with anyone else.
Correct.
I need women in my life.
Yeah.
I cherish the women in my life. I think women should have women friends. I'm a huge girls girl. Super pro women and but I'm talking like my quality friends.
Hmm.
I'm not the type where I want like 30 female friends or women friends. I
Hmm.
have my group. I trust them. And that's my girls. But
Hmm.
I need that for balance. And I think all women should have at least one female best friend.
Hmm.
And I'm not just talking where we live here. I have friends from the past, from college, from that I've known through the years,
Hmm.
and I cherish them and I stay in touch with them. So I don't think I could go and live on a bunch of property unless I can still have my, once or twice a month night out with my girls. And then I'd be fine.
Yeah.
But I have to have that. I couldn't be somewhere where I don't have access to go spend time with the women in my life.
Yeah.
So, but I know you don't really feel that need,
Well,
you know.
it is different as you're talking through that. I'm on the phone quite a bit, right? I work from home
Yes.
and I'm on the phone most of the day, nearly all of the day,
Yeah.
one after another. And I do start my day with talking to the same people pretty much every day, and I like it. I get a lot out of that. So I don't know if I'm a total introvert. It's an interesting concept because when Friday night rolls around, if we don't leave the house until never, I'm good. Right? I don't even need to go to Home Depot or Lowe's or anything. I'm good. But I do get fulfillment, however passive or active it is in just my daily life interacting with people.
Yeah, I think that your social battery is burnt by Friday because you've
Probably.
been on the phone talking with people all
Yeah.
week.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, but you also are not big on going out to dinner.
No, I don't like
You've
that.
always hated it.
Yeah.
You've always pushed back. It's not anything that going out, it's not something you enjoy. Your idea of being home is whereas when through the years, by the time Friday would come, I had been home with the
Yeah.
kids and
Yeah.
I wanted to get out.
Yeah.
And you'd been out at work
Yeah.
and you wanted to stay home. And I'm sure that happens to couples
Oh, yeah.
where we have opposite needs by the time Friday comes.
Yeah.
And at that point, there was there was battling. I always say I'd have to do like a PowerPoint presentation 2 weeks before I'd want to go out just to get you to.
That's not fair.
So, but I think that is interesting, just how friendships ebb and flow. But I still go back to no matter what, I don't think that anyone should be, again, my opinion, I don't think anyone should be close with the opposite sex. I just think it's inappropriate.
I think it's dangerous, you know,
Yeah.
too many opportunities for maybe some unintended consequences or
Misunderstandings,
bad things.
boundaries getting
Yeah.
crossed. I think that is part of marriage, is protecting it, right?
Yeah.
And if you cherish it, then you don't want to expose it to any risk. And it's not a thing like of trust. It's just that still, what 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 are you not getting from your partner that you think you need from this other person? And I'm not talking about acquaintance stuff, like we
Yeah.
went out to dinner with couples. I'm talking about like where you're on the phone talking to someone for like an hour. Why do you need to talk to someone of the opposite sex on the phone?
No.
If it's not work related, it doesn't make any sense to me. And
I cannot think of a scenario where that's remotely appropriate, or
No.
I'm not even a prude, right?
Yeah. But no,
I'm
there's
not some, I don't know, hard, dyed in the wool type of hardcore person here. I just think
no.
that's totally inappropriate.
No, you shouldn't be meeting someone for coffee to talk with them.
No.
Unless it's like work related or
Yeah.
school related, but no, that's what I'm talking about. Those
Yeah.
boundaries have to be set. So,
Well, if you think about that, right? So here's probably why I'm not into it. When you think about that, when you first start to get together with someone, those are the things you do. You maybe go get coffee. You maybe go get dinner. Maybe you go get a drink. Maybe you go for a walk. You do right. Those are the activities
yeah.
that you are part of the courtship or courting phase,
Yeah.
right? And then over time, that continues to evolve and stuff. So if you're doing that, you're getting some juvenile romantic fee. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? There's
Yes.
something happening there that's not
Yeah.
completely altruistic.
And that other person could feed a part of your ego that it could then open the door of comparing, well, this person makes
A
me
hundred
feel this
percent. Yeah.
way, where your partner could be exhausted
Yeah.
from life and isn't going to look at you and be like, oh, you're so wonderful because maybe they just got done with a meeting for 2 hours or cleaning the bathroom or who
Yeah.
knows what's going on. So it's not fair to compare this fresh perspective to somebody that you're doing life with.
Yeah.
Because when you're married, you're doing life.
Yeah.
It's a fluid, active thing that requires work. And it's awesome, but it's not it's something you have to honor and cherish. And I think that's probably in the vows, but I mean for real, it's just setting those boundaries as part of that. And that brings us back to you just never cheat.
Hmm.
You just can't cheat. Yeah, it's not going to come back. It's not worth it. And I will go back. Make sure if you're going to do that, that experience is worth your money and your time with your children, because that's what you're trading and you're losing your partner. So that experience better be that valuable, bring you that much joy,
I,
because you literally are losing your partner, access to your children, and at least half your money.
I actually would think your other perspective is probably a little better in that just move on. If you're going to cheat,
Yeah.
just move on
Yeah.
and, just move on.
Oh, yeah. No, end the relationship.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there's too many people that want both.
Yeah. But
Let's speak for men. They want the wife at home that's taking care of their children, or the wife, not necessarily at home, but the wife and the mother of their children. And they want to still be able to go and get some on the side. There's a lot of men like that.
yeah.
There's a lot of men that want both. And I think it amazes me that they have the energy to pull all of it off.
Well, there is the concept of marrying a virgin and, protecting that, I don't know what the right word would be, but almost putting that person on a pedestal while you're out doing your
Yes.
debauchery and
Yes.
stuff, right? That is a thing.
Oh, I
Sure.
think there's men who have that.
Yeah,
I think it's
100%.
called the Madonna complex.
Why? What's the Madonna
It's like the
reference?
Virgin Mary type
Okay, yeah.
complex, where she's just pure. She's the
Yeah.
mother and the wife,
Yeah.
but you're going to go do all your other stuff. No, I think there's definitely that still goes on for sure.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe will end in our generation. I don't know if the younger generations men subscribe to that at all, but I know men in our generation for
You know,
sure.
it's an interesting thing, just to tie it back to a generational podcast. The what's the millennials?
Yeah.
I wonder if that's as big of a thing. This is more of a boomer thing that gets isn't as prolific in the Gen X.
The
and it's
Madonna
slowly,
complex?
no, the
Oh.
just men cheating or women cheating. The
Oh.
you know
You mean like are the millennials cheating?
Yeah, I wonder if there's a statistical variance between the generations on and how that all pans out.
I don't know. I mean, I know that
A listener
yeah.
post that.
I know just from what I research with the whole dating apps thing, I think there's a lot of really sketchy stuff that goes on. But I don't know if once they get married and settle down and commit, if there's cheating, as
Hmm.
much cheating. I don't know. Because you're right. I mean, in Gen X, there's definitely is a lot of cheating.
You know, it's
There's,
funny too. Everybody, I don't know too many guys that cheat in my world. It's just not a
I
thing.
don't think men tell each other when they cheat.
I just think that I'm pretty confident that guys, at least the guys I work with, right? And we've talked about
Oh,
this,
well,
the nerd
yeah.
thing,
They're
right?
I okay, yeah. Okay, so they're IT. Okay, so yeah, there's women that I've seen on social media that say, where are the guys that are going to be loyal? Where are the guys that aren't going to cheat? Where are the guys that are going to be good husbands and good fathers? And it's the nerds. It's the
So
nerds.
you're calling me a nerd.
Yes.
Get out of here.
No, it's the nerds. The nerds are the ones that are going to be loyal husbands, wonderful fathers, good providers because a lot of them are in IT.
Hmm.
And that's, I'm not saying that the other guys aren't those things either, but a nerd is pretty reliable. You can trust a nerd. Although there is that risk of the nice guy nerd who seems like a great guy and then he ends up being psychotic or crazy or mean or thinks he's this big high value man and is like nothing like you thought. But in general, nerds are a pretty safe bet to marry.
I'm dying because I don't consider myself a nerd, but I get the reference because I am into nerdy shit.
Oh yeah.
But the
Yeah.
best is getting called a beta male the other day.
Oh
I'm dying over
yes.
that. I'm still laughing
Oh
over that.
yes, I know, that's pretty funny.
Yeah.
No, but that is where you find a lot of that loyalness. I forgot that we were talking about that. But yeah, I don't know.
I'm not a nerd. I'm a Leo. So I'm,
You're a weird combo because you were an athlete, but then but you were a closet nerd.
yeah.
You were taking apart clocks when you were young, trying to figure out how they worked, but you also were the quarterback on the football team. So it's like you kind of had this weird combo, I guess. But I would say those are the safe bet. So, I mean, I don't know. I think we started with cheating. We went all over the place, but I think people just before they enter into full commitment need to make sure you can handle it. Make sure you can handle what you're getting into because it's a full commitment of your mind, your heart, and your body.
And your wallet.
And your wallet. What was the other thing we were talking about?
What's funny is, speaking of nerds, you got guys like, what's his name? Bezos.
Yeah.
He's getting married
Yeah.
soon. Zuckerberg
Yeah.
from Facebook, right? He's a nerdy guy, and I don't know what his wife is or anything about her, but he's got a wife and everything. He's
Yeah.
got some kids. Um, the chief nerd finally got divorced, Bill Gates,
Yeah.
right? So it's kind of interesting.
Yeah. No, I think nerds find their partners, their spouses,
Yeah.
but you know how you said, you don't know any guys who cheat?
Hmm.
And I said, they're not going to tell you that they cheated. Like, I don't think that's something guys brag to each other about, is it? Well, you wouldn't know because you said you don't have any friends that.
No, and no, I don't think they tell each other. Not that I'm aware of, but you might get I've definitely been around guys that are married, and there's a pretty woman there, a hot girl,
Yeah.
and they're like, oh, that kind of thing, and it's
Yeah.
like, but that's not
cheating.
that's not cheating, but they may cheat. That might be the type. What I'm saying is the guys that I know, I wouldn't do that per se.
Okay.
I might. I don't think so, but I'm not doing that. Like, oh, look at that type of thing.
Right.
And so,
Yes.
you know what I mean?
It's almost a projection a little bit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay. I see what you're saying. Like
yeah,
that could be intuitive of other
yeah,
things. Yeah.
yeah.
So there's this trend going around right now where women are sharing voice memos or voicemails that their ex-boyfriends have sent them or sharing recordings of their ex going off on them, like they've turned their phone on during the argument. And these men are saying the most horrendous, abusive, disgusting, threatening things to these women. Horrible.
Mm-hmm.
And they're just normal men, okay? And then there's men coming on making videos saying, "Where are you girls finding these guys?"
Mm-hmm.
And the women are saying, "They're your friends."
Mm-hmm.
And I do think that there's a whole aspect of men that other men don't see. I think that ugliness that is inside some men that they only project onto women because they feel stronger, they feel powerful or whatever. Um, they're being abusive. They only share that part of themselves with the women in their life, but the men in their life never ever see that side to them. And it's just, it could be your best friend, and you would never know that he's a horrible person to his girlfriend or his wife. And so it's been very interesting to see this trend expose a lot of that and the shock value on men with
Mm-hmm.
it,
Mm-hmm.
because they're almost acting like these are the exception.
Or
And
like they're making this shit up type of thing.
no, they're more like, these aren't normal guys.
Yeah.
Like this isn't how guys are. And women are saying, no, this is how guys are.
Yeah.
This is how not how all men are.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of men like this.
Well,
You just don't, they don't do this around you
yeah.
because you would tell them to stop.
Yeah.
You would go off on them. They would never feel safe being like that around their peers.
Yeah.
They would be judged.
It's kind of funny because I, as you're saying that, I think men are extremely fragile, very fragile and very weak and very, um, you know, just sensitive. And it cracks me up again, the guy who called me a beta male because I commented that I could never do some of the things that you've been through, like the hysterectomy and that kind of stuff. That just makes me queasy. But I think I'm an alpha male to be able to admit that,
yeah. Yes,
So it's like,
yeah.
I don't want that happening to me. I'm good he was referencing a sore shoulder. I have sore bones. My knees hurt at times, but that's not an internal thing. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So my point is, I think men are mentally, at least emotionally, probably underdeveloped in many aspects. So when a woman maybe rejects them or doesn't go along for the ride, they go nuts.
Doesn't do what they wanted.
Yeah, maybe.
That's, it's
I don't know if it's not a compliance power play per se. It's just you bruise their ego and they don't have the capacity to deal with it and cope with it and move on, and it's like a deep blow or something. Instead
yeah.
of just being like, okay, whatever, you're crazy or whatever. She didn't like my shit and she called me on it. Okay, I'm moving on.
Yeah.
It's
Or avoiding.
or avoiding, yeah.
Which is abusive as well. I'm sorry. But no, it also, though, I think there's a lot of anger um management is I think there's a lot of anger issues with
Mhm.
a lot of men. And not just throwing this on men, but I'm sorry, the violent outbursts, the aggressiveness, and this trend is about men that are normal, regular guys and then are getting
Is
exposed.
is there a flip side of guys doing the same? Because girls do
Girls
leave crazy
can go
messages
crazy. I
too,
know.
right? So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it
Not
isn't
yet.
just it's all right.
Just
All right,
wait.
guys, bring it.
No, no. No, no, but it's disturbing. Like if you listen next, I'll actually send you one if you heard it.
I don't need I
Yeah,
don't need it.
it's not just normal. It's like really disturbing. So
Yeah.
it's been very interesting, and that brings me back to, I don't think men share that dark side of themselves with each other. So you guys don't totally know what you're each capable of when it comes to how you are with women. I think that's private, right? So I think you guys, you would don't totally know
Yeah, probably not.
how deep it can go.
I think it goes both ways though, because I don't think it's not necessarily masculine or cool to have your buddies know that maybe you're whispering, I love you, I'll see you later, that kind of
Right.
thing
Right.
when you're hanging up the phone. and it's the opposite would be, oh man, you know, you better watch it when I get home, or what, I don't know,
Yeah,
whatever
yeah,
that
yeah, yeah.
commentary is, right? But
The two
the two
extremes.
extremes, it's just not something we're sharing. We're down the middle here.
So wait, when men are together, do they ever talk about or share um how they feel about the women in their life with each other, or do they keep that private?
I don't know if we share what we think about our wives. You know, it's because there's a common understanding if you're married and you're not out bitching about the wife, you probably like her,
Yeah.
right? Um, if someone's complaining, though, I don't know if I've come across that in years. Maybe I've been in situations where people I've worked with or known, their wives are fairly controlling in a sense, or that's at least the perception. Um, and it's like, well, when are you coming home? Why aren't you home? You know, you don't do
Mm,
that to me, so it's
right.
not an issue.
Yeah.
But there's people like that where, you know, it's but the flip
Yeah.
side is girls' night out. I'm all for it. Go have
Yes.
fun. I'd prefer you to be home semi early so you don't wake me up.
But I've come
But
home at 2 in the morning before,
yeah,
just to
yeah,
be clear.
yeah.
Not in years, though. Oh, not in years.
But there's guys who
Yes.
don't like their wives going
Oh,
out,
yes,
right?
I know
And
some
there's
people like
women
that,
who
yeah.
don't like their guys going out.
Yeah.
So there's, you know,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's probably where it gets
yeah,
exposed. But us women, we still share, but not like super deep. I think you reach a point in your marriage
yeah.
probably where you do keep some things private,
I would say you keep
and
most things private.
you keep
Yeah,
most things private. Like
yeah.
we keep pretty much everything private.
Mhm.
Um, but so yeah, I think the longer you're together and the older you get, unless it's an abusive situation, extreme situation, even with women, I think we still keep most things,
Mhm.
unless there's something serious going on.
Mhm.
But with your closest girlfriends, you still may share, a
Yeah.
decent amount. So, but I don't know if men, I don't know if, I don't, maybe there is groups of men who do talk and share about all that type of stuff, but it probably just depends on the people,
Yeah, it definitely
not the
has to.
nerds.
Yeah, yeah. No, we're talking computers and
Yes.
sports and weather.
Again, this is why you should end up with a nerd.
Yeah,
Then he'll make a hydroponic garden and
there you
talk to you
go.
about that for hours.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that probably covers all of our little thoughts and ramblings on cheating, on boundaries in relationships and marriage when it comes to being friends with the opposite sex,
Mhm.
adult friendships in general,
Yeah.
you know. And again, cheating is a no,
You
too.
know, the last thing I will say is I think it's not a sensitive of a topic for us, but it's a sensitive topic. It's pretty
Absolutely.
serious, right? And it's
Yeah.
devastating when you're in that situation. I don't think we're making light of it. It's just something, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, no, cheating is devastating to everyone. It's like throwing a bomb into the relationship, and if you have a family, into the family.
Mhm.
Um, it just there's just so many casualties that happen. It goes everywhere, and you just can't return back to normal. So it's heartbreaking. My heart breaks for the people who've had to go through that, honestly. So, yeah, it's one of the reasons I wanted to talk about it,
Yeah.
and share. So, yeah, again, we would love to hear from you. And we have some exciting guests coming up
Yeah.
over the next couple months. We're going to be having a lot of really cool episodes. So keep your eyes out on that one.
Yeah.
That'll be just boom, boom, boom coming up. So we will see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.